Hello.
Hi, good afternoon, Candace. Wonderful to
I'm,
see you.
I'm so happy to see you. It looks really sunny there.
Actually, it's a little cloud covered, but it's cooler.
Oh, good, good.
So that's really nice.
Okay.
We often have the same weather. I look up Spokane, Washington a lot.
Oh, good, good. Yeah. Well, I'm really I want to tell you that one of my clients emailed me when I emailed out the YouTube information for one of your videos. And she said, "Oh, it was so nice to see Cheyenne." And and I always say, my friend Cheyenne says, for 30 years, 40 years, I don't know. And so it was really cool. And I thought, okay, yeah, that is exactly how this needs to be, as Cheyenne says, to get all of your information that's guided me my whole life, it seems, um, in a miraculous way. So,
Well, thank
what are you
you.
going to talk about today, honey?
I think I'll talk about insomnia today.
Okay.
Um, Insomnia is one of the Dr. Bragg, who was a famous naturopath, talked about 9 doctors, and it's one of the doctors, Dr. Sleep. There's Dr. Sunshine, Dr. Air, Dr. Pure Water, Dr. Natural Food. Fasting is natural. Exercise, rest. He calls it rest. I differentiate between rest and sleep, but posture and your mind. And the good news about all 9 of those doctors is they're free and they're available to every one of us. And so many people, even back when I started my practice like 35 years ago, so many people needed help sleeping, but even more people cannot sleep without medication. I'm not here to diss medication because sleep is so important, and without it, everything else shortly goes downhill. And so, unfortunately, it's not a cure for insomnia. It's a it's a symptom relief. It helps you sleep for the night. Um, Back in the 90s and early 2000s, I noticed the prescriptions were saying no more than 4 to 6 weeks. And some of the same prescriptions are now being said no more than 3 to 6 months. And I think the doctors are doing that because people are on them for years and they're adjusting according to the needs of the people.
Right.
But what I'd like to do today is put a little consciousness on sleep from a Chinese perspective and see how to go about it. Now, the 9 doctors that I just mentioned support one another. For example, people that get a little sunlight each day produce more melatonin. Their GABA receptors are more susceptible to sleep than people that get no sunshine. So all these things match together. If someone's dehydrated, they can't sleep very well. If someone has no exercise at all, we notice the people that sleep the best are the people that have labor jobs, right? The bricklayers, and they have no problem sleeping because their body, as soon as they go down, their bodies are relaxing. Not
Right.
everybody has the benefit of being able to exercise every day. And so I would bring out the fact that everything can be adjusted very gently. So someone walking to the mailbox might be more exercise than they've had for 2 weeks. And so, I recommend that people get exercise earlier in the day, 5 or 10 minutes if they don't exercise at all. And that actually helps people sleep. But what I love about Chinese medicine is you can study it your whole life and still learn something. And it mirrors nature. And so, for example, we just went through noon. Noon is what we would call extreme yang. Noon is pure fire. Noon is absolute. 12 o'clock is pure fire, and midnight is pure darkness. This pure sunlight is at noon and pure darkness is at midnight. And so from midnight on, the next day's energy descends and it gets more and more and more yang until midnight. So sometimes if someone is very, very tired, let's say 11 o'clock at night, but they make it to 12 o'clock, they're very tired. But when 12 o'clock comes along, they get a second wind because that whole energy has cast down for them. Unfortunately, though, that energy is for that following day. So if you're using it at that moment, you accumulate something in the sleep industry they call sleep debt. And so sleep is one of the most important medicines besides water and air that there is. In one video, we distinguished the difference between rest and sleep. And sometimes people will go to bed and they have not rested at all. They've been busy all day, morning till night. Maybe their mothers or grandmothers or this or that. They work, they do this. And so their body hasn't even had a chance to rest. And so they're laying there because their body says, I need to rest. The two organs that are prominent in insomnia, and there are 5 elements: fire, earth, metal, wood, and water. But the two that are most focused on is the heart and the kidneys. And so I'll be talking about that in just a minute. But heart fire we know goes like this. It raises, and water goes like this. If I poured water on my table, it would roll onto the ground and then it would roll into the crack. It goes down and fire goes up. So there's a relationship between the grounding, nurturing kidneys in our body and the heart. Does the heart ever stop working? Never. Does the brain ever stop working? Never. So the heart is a flame with what we call Shen, a spirit, when we're sleeping, and it's a flame with spirit when we're awake. The problem comes when the fire consumes us and keeps us awake. Insomnia is a symptom. It's not, someone thinks they're doing a great service to tell someone they have arthritis. Arthritis is a diagnosis. It means you have joints that are inflamed. And that's not news to anyone with arthritis. So
Right.
just telling someone they have arthritis is not a help. The pain medication might be a help, or it might be help for them to know it's arthritis. Just knowing you have insomnia is actually not that helpful. But what do we do about it? In Chinese medicine, they have very general diagnoses and specific treatments. And then in Western medicine, they'll have very specific diagnoses and very general treatments. So 1 million people with insomnia are all on the same medicine. Well, in Chinese medicine, we try to differentiate which system is causing the insomnia. And I'm going to give just a few things that can cause it. So it's not like acupuncture cures insomnia. The body heals itself. And if you can work on the rhythms and find your rhythm, everybody has different rhythms. And I'm going to be speaking about the 24-hour cycle of qi, which is a daytime rhythm. But some people in our society, we don't need to all wake up at the same time. Everybody's different. And some people have different organ systems that are more compromised in their illness. For example, in the morning is earth. From 7 in the morning to 11 is all earth. So stomach and spleen. So it could be blood sugar or other things that are going on. I tell people with insomnia that I think have a spleen and stomach involvement that one of the best things they can do is, most of them love sugar. And so sugar is a big problem. And I don't tell them to quit sugar, but I tell them to delay their sugar until the afternoon so they don't get 2 hits on their pancreas. They don't spike that pancreas first thing in the morning with a donut or a sugar or a rock star or whatever people are drinking. They wait and they start with something else. And that's a good way to start. It's overwhelming to do 2 miles in one day, and it's overwhelming to quit sugar. But if you can delay it from the first thing in the morning, you're great. It's really important. If someone has diabetes and they're up all night urinating, you'll have insomnia because you have other issues. So if you don't address the core issues, the insomnia doesn't go away. However, there's lots of tips about that.
Right.
For example, the fire time is from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. 7 to 9 is the pericardium, the heart protector. For those that have the touch, the heart opens up to the hands, the lungs open up to the nose, metal opens up to the nose, the liver opens up to the eyes, the kidneys open up to the ears, and the stomach and spleen open up to the tongue. And so during the fire time, like for those that are in relationship, for example, a lot of people will be hanging out on the couch, watching TV, holding hands. That's like the perfect time to do that. So if your love language is fire, I mean, is touch, that's an amazing time to receive that. So there's natural times that the world gives us. The 7 to 9 is the pericardium, 9 to 11 p.m. is the Sanjiao. What is the Sanjiao? It's called the triple heater. All the organs are contained in our enteric space here, our organ space. And at that time, the body sort of takes an inventory of all the organs and tries to break down the day. What happens for a lot of people is they don't break down the day. They don't break it down in any way, what's happened, and they take it to them with bed. And so if someone does go to sleep between 9 and midnight, they say the hours are worth double because it's extreme yin. And then at midnight, it's yang, yang, yang until noon. And then what happens after noon, it begins to come yin. What happens to a lot of people in the afternoon under that yin influence? They're exhausted, they're tired. Right. Or they have insulin resistance and they've eaten something, and the body is, digestion takes 1/3 of our total energy. And so one of the Chinese.
Let me go back for a minute. What do you mean? What do you mean if they don't work it through the day, or
they don't break down their energy? A lot of people, what I'm about to talk about is like making things conscious and not going down, letting your head go down upon your wrath.
Okay, so going down and ruminating.
Yeah, well, we naturally
going on because you haven't processed it.
Right.
Right? That's
right.
Okay.
When we go to sleep, for example, that 4 or 5 minutes before we go to sleep, whatever is on our mind is going to stamp into our subconscious for the next several hours. I only sleep 3 hours. Okay, for the next 3 hours, you're going to stamp that in there. So those of us who pray, that can clear the deck, or putting our head down and forgiving the day, forgiving the things that were said or not said, or what we accomplished or what we didn't accomplish, or giving gratitude on the day. That's enough. That's enough to put it to bed. A lot of people take their pathology in their psychology, and in Chinese medicine, we say 80 to 85% of all illness starts emotional is the cause. So if you're laying in bed, let's take this example. If you go to bed between 11 p.m. and 3 in the morning, you're going to bed at wood, which is liver and gallbladder, and the emotions associated that are anger or resentment or revenge. And it's not all anger is bad. It's the energy to grow. It's the energy to push through. 1 minute of anger can be worth 2 or 3 hours of energy. So it's a great tool to push through because it's so energetic, but it can be so exhausting. So if you're laying in, I do a long intake when I first meet someone. And one of the questions I sometimes ask, if I'm not quite sure what element they might be or expressing, I ask what their pet peeve is. And you can learn a lot by asking someone what gets their goat. Okay. The wood types, it's always about what someone did, someone else did, this person did, someone else did. You know, a fire type might say, well, I just can't get this together in myself. Or, you know, a metal person might be, they like things clean, or, you know, more OCD type pet peeves. So if you go to bed with haven't broken that down and you're ruminating about all the stress, I'm not saying what you're stressed about is not worthy of being looked at and concerned. And I'm not saying someone hasn't been wronged. But when you go through that, if you don't put that down or digest it in some way, or be able to put it on hold through forgiveness or something else, we're tied to who we love and who we hate. So it's better to wax neutral on things. And there is ways to wax neutral before we go to bed. So it's really important. But if you're tossing and turning and you've got a lot of stress, you take that into your bed. Right. That you do that several nights in a row and you have a momentum on your bed.
Right. So one way to wax neutral would be to pray, to give it up, to
forgive.
envision the person, well, that's down the line, but envision the person and just, see them with love around them, or something, even
That's
though our feelings may not be there yet, just something that's working toward moving that energy. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And forgiveness works like a leaven. Nobody can forgive horrific things all at once, but you can forgive something for 1 second. And if you do that, that cuts that tie and allows you to lay there in peace.
Right.
There's other things. People have CPAP machines and so forth, which keep people awake. And obviously, if you're snoring or you have other issues, there's other things going on in the body. There's 3 major detox organs that I like to look at, and that's the kidney, the large intestine, and the lung. And if you don't know which one to detox first, you always detox the large intestine, because nobody's getting out the door if the large intestine is closed or full. And so the other detox organ to talk about is the skin. If you have some skin issues, it means 1 or 2 of those detox organs are in trouble. They're not handling it as much, and it's going into the skin. If you're laying in bed at night and you're itching, you have an allergy, and you haven't had time to listen all day. Why is it that when I go to bed, everything happens? People tell me, because you're listening, you're there. The body elemental is like, hey, I've got this going on. You might be allergic to a medication you're taking. You might be allergic to wheat. 85% of the population is, but they still eat it every day. Or you're taking in so many chemicals. It's, I remember a study, not a study, but a science project that somebody did in my school when I was in high school, and they studied beer. It was a football player, and it was such a cool science project because he was studying beer. And they said that number 1, and there wasn't that many beers in the 80s like there are the craft beers now, but I remember that on that Budweiser had the most chemicals of any other beer. And so if there's ways to cut down and drink craft beers, or there's ways to cut down and handle it. Some people have earth issues. They have either diabetes or they have stomach reflux. And as soon as they lay down, their esophagus becomes full of acid. And so how do you handle that? You handle that by not eating 2 hours before you go to bed and removing acid forming foods, which are sugar, white things like potatoes and bread and things that are processed, and heavy meat and chemicals. So, all these doctors I mentioned at the beginning, Dr. Sunshine, Dr. Air, Dr. Water, Dr. Food, fasting, and some people can't fast, but you can fast from certain things. If you're a major coffee drinker, you don't have to fast from the coffee, but there are ways to take the acid down by 40%. Maybe you cold brew it yourself at home. That's 40% less acid than the hot brew. So there's all these things that can be done.
And this all relates to insomnia.
Yes.
Because so people are figuring, well, why can't I go to sleep, and ignoring the body?
Yes.
The whole system.
Yeah, the whole system. Sometimes, and especially with our young people, it's environmental. And I was visiting a young millennial, not my daughter, but someone else. And I noticed on the Wi-Fi that I had about 30 or 40 choices of Wi-Fi. They were in a building. So you're in that much electromagnetic stress. You might be in a city. You don't get to touch grass, as the millennials say. Go touch grass. If someone's getting like whirly, you see the comment, go touch grass. Why? Because it grounds. It grounds,
Did they learn that from you?
No, I didn't. So many people are doing things on the grounding. I don't have to do that anymore. Gaia has this beautiful grounding movie that I couldn't have made any better, but says it all. And then I've had young people, some of them have the wireless thing in their ear all the time. And then they go to bed and they don't turn off the TV or whatever sound is on. There has to be a sound on everything. Well, whatever imagine all those commercials, those drug commercials going in and being stamped into your subconscious. Now, I had a practice for 30 years and I didn't play music in my practice, mostly because I'm a water type, I'm a kidney type, and I like silence. And so it worked for me. So all those, I get it all the time. I'm not against the music. I mean, with massage and other things, that's great. But there's a listening and a presence that happens to the body when somebody can just shut down. And sometimes there's too much anxiety to shut down. They can't. It's too scary. I have the most compassion. I have compassion for overwhelm of any emotion, but the most compassion, especially fear, because it's very, very difficult. And that's where the kidneys come in. And the kidneys can have two different types of syndromes. They either are too dry or they could be too frozen. How many people have really frozen feet and they're cold all the time? And they sleep cold no matter what. And what I recommend for them is just to simply take a hot water bottle and put it on their feet. Well, yes, it's palliative, which means it's only comforting, but there is there's only one meridian point on the bottom of the feet. There's points all over the body. There's other points on the bottom of the feet, extra points, but it's a kidney point. And so it's actually will help you if you're cold, and if you're cold, you're always cold, you can put that on the bottom of your feet. The kidney time is 5 to 7 p.m. And it's daylight savings time in most places. In Arizona, we don't have that. So you adjust it 1 hour forward when you're doing daylight savings time, when you're looking at these hours. The other thing, as an aside, one of the cheapest freezing cold medicines to take is cinnamon. Just 1 teaspoon of cinnamon in warm water. If you do that every day, and you're freezing cold, or you've got blue lips, or you've got lots of varicose veins, it'll warm up a person. Okay. Not all cinnamons are created equal, but if you've had a cinnamon sitting in your cabinet for 8 years, don't use that cinnamon. That cinnamon has lost its luster. Some people have the opposite problem. They have night sweats. So once you wake up.
Can you stop for a second?
Yeah.
I'm remembering one day you coming over and walking out of my kitchen and you've got a cinnamon stick in your mouth. It was like you're just chewing on the cinnamon stick. I'd never seen that before, but yeah. I was very freezing. I was one of those that was very cold all the time. I had a hip injury when I was young. I'm a Generation X, and Generation X, our parents, the boomers, spent 67% less time with us than we spent with our kids. I'm not complaining about that. I'm an independent soul and pretty fearless, but I did break my hip when I was 11 years old and I never got it treated. We had to just walk it off. It took a long time. And I think that's but I didn't know. I didn't actually know that until I was in my 30s, and a chiropractor that took an x-ray told me. But I was really cold and jammed up. And of course, I was going to acupuncture school and learning all about that. And I actually got through that after being in China and sweating for every day, and just I got through that freezing coldness. But if you have the cold disease, it's very easy to treat. Another challenge, extra credit for that, is when you get up, immediately walk. In other words, put your shoes on, urinate, go out the door and walk. Well, if you don't have the energy to walk far, just walk to your laundry room or walk across the thing or walk somewhere back. Then you stimulate that metabolism. That's not right for everyone. Some people need to absolutely rest all day, or rest through the earth times, which is the spleen and the stomach. You have to sort of see, when do I need the rest? If someone's having a diabetic coma, it would be great if they could take a 15-minute nap. It would be better at work for them to do that than to be so tired. But it's very, very difficult. Dementia, people don't realize, is actually called type 3 diabetes. So diabetes is a disease that rots your legs and your arms and everything else because your body has so much sugar in it. And so the brain can get rotten too. And that's often a diabetic problem. And so that's easily treatable. I'm not here to give advice on the food today, but starting with protein and
you know, cutting the sugar, waiting to have sweets until afternoon, you'll still get that spike, but you know, sorry about the phone there. So anyway, so I mentioned a little bit about environment, and you know, our rooms are important where we sleep. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that say you should make your bed every day. The reason that is just to reset the room. What I recommend, if possible, to have a window in your room. Not everybody has that. But if you're ever buying a home, you definitely want a window in your room and a window in your bathroom so you can ventilate it. To open up the windows, and even if it's a hot day, just open it. If you would stay up late, open it at 1 a.m. All the windows in your house with the fans on for 4 or 5 minutes. It just clears out the energy. But if someone's having a long insomnia, they're ruminating in that same energy and not clearing the room. And it's difficult. And so it's just about hygiene.
Yeah.
So we talked about the mind and setting ourselves up to go to sleep with maybe a positive thought, a forgiving thought, or a prayer, or even sometimes we can't be that positive, but we can just say tomorrow's a new day. You know, this day is in the can, it's over. And declaring it completed, it allows us maybe to move forward.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's really incredible information. So
it's just important to have a relationship with your own self and your own health.
Yeah. I just want to go back for a minute to the concept of doctor, brain doctor, all of that. And so I just, it's a beautiful way of being empowered without, at least for me, without feeling like I should this or should, you know, and so, yeah, I know for myself, my body starts moving in a certain direction toward health now that I'm not working so much, because I can hear it. And so that's the one piece I'm going to take away from this that's new for me. I mean, there's a lot that's new, but that's the piece, is the awareness of all of these self-healers within, coming from different places, and connecting that. Because I think, you know, for me, most of my life, you know, as a therapist, was trying to figure out how to connect the heart and the head. You know, there was always out of your head, into your heart, you know, that kind of thing. And that awareness of all of these internal doctors and how to communicate together and connect. And so, yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you, honey.
And none of us say, hey, you're taking my sunlight. That's mine. No, the sun is infinite giver. All these things are at our disposal. We just have to use the mind and become our own ally. If you're not willing, say example, to look in the commode, or if you just refuse to be connected to what's coming out, that is an issue. That probably means you're not connected to what's going in. You know, I just heard this thing about.
Oh, that's a great thing. Yeah.
I heard this thing about the millennials. 50%, maybe it's Gen Z, maybe it's both. 50% of millennials and Gen Z won't date anyone if they don't recycle. And I love that I love that they hold that.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you're not conscious of your waste. You know, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I mean, I get it.
Right.
And so if you're not, you know, and water is an issue. Water is a real issue for everyone. We all need clean water. And that's not always free on this list. That's not free because not everyone has access to clean water. I drink tap water here. Because I'm in a clean area in the mountains of Arizona, but I'll put it in a glass, like a whole bunch, and then it'll settle down and some of the chlorine gas will come out, and the next day it's more drinkable. But
Right. I do that with my plant water.
some families go through hundreds of plastic bottles, and that's just getting that in and hauling that across the country. That's all really difficult.
Yeah.
I wanted to come back around one thing, Candace.
Okay.
This is what I often do in bed. I touch my heart and I touch my head and I bring myself right here. You can heal yourself. You can use your mind to, instead of saying, oh my God, I'm breaking out all over, you can actually use your mind. And even if you don't know a thing about health, to begin and command the healing and breathe deeper, breathe just the pure air. I mean, we've had a lot of compromise on the air. Some people are having 25% less air than they normally get, and they're trying to go throughout the day, and it's very hard. Oxygen's the most important thing.
Right.
So just holding this and this, or maybe you have an injury, or maybe you were in a car accident, holding that, and yes, you go to bed at night and then it hurts. Just holding that and forgiving it rather than, and I'm not saying you're not in pain or it's not worth complaining about, but when you're asleep, we need to calm and not amped up. We calm that down. So there's the few minutes, there's the visualization that you can take in. Oh, I have heart arrhythmia. Oh, I'm just envisioning that, just calming and at peace. I mean, the heart never stops. The brain never stops. Every day, I mean, it's an amazing thing that keeps us alive. And if it stops, we're gone. So just a little heart hug and a little appreciation for the heart. You give your body elemental one appreciation, one little listen. They'll do backflips. I believe there's a consciousness in place. Do backflips to serve you and bring you the help. So just knowing that there is a healing mechanism in place, I call it the body elemental. Other people might say, oh, it's the autonomic nervous system. I believe it has consciousness, just like, something else might have consciousness, a plant or so. Just really here today and very grateful to be here just to empower people, but to say how important the sleep is. So if we just had one little consciousness about your sleep, one increase in consciousness, that's great.
Yeah.
This is one of the most important health keys there are.
Yeah.
And no shekels required for it.
Yeah. Thank you, honey. Thank you so much. I so much appreciate this. And I think we're going to do, when we do our next one on rock salt.
Yeah, it's about the spirit of fear, anxiety, and rock salt. Anxiety is a huge, huge problem. Good. So it's an anxiety hack, real short. So look for that.
Good. I'm excited. Okay. Love you, honey.
Love you too. Bye now.